President Trump is the one person, the one country that can influence Israel. Merz from Germany and Starmer from the UK and Macron from France have tried, and they are doing their best, I believe. But it's Trump who can call the shots.
Donald Trump says Hamas has accepted parts of his 20-point ceasefire plan for Gaza and is ready to begin negotiations immediately. Now, as part of the deal, Hamas has signalled its readiness to release all remaining Israeli hostages. So is it possible that Trump's plan could bring about lasting peace? Sir Vincent Fean is the former British Consul General in Jerusalem and the de facto ambassador to the occupied Palestinian territories from 2010 to 2014 and joins us now. Sir Vincent, thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure.
Are you feeling optimistic, Sir Vincent, today?
It's an opportunity. It's a rare chance, Alexis, to stop this 2-year nightmare and save lives. The lives of the 20 hostages who are still with us, thank God, and thousands of Palestinians who are enduring genocide. I describe it as through indiscriminate bombardment and deliberate starvation. It's the immediate crisis, Alexis, but there is more to it than that. It's half the story, if you like. In the other half of Palestine, the West Bank, there is currently apartheid through settlement expansion and rampant settler violence. But I come back to my first point. Right now, there is an opportunity, and we should give some credit to President Trump for creating it.
So, Vincent, critics may say, look, we've been here before. We had a ceasefire and an exchange of hostages, albeit not the release of all hostages. Is there a danger that this could all stall in the first phase yet again?
There are many risks. Back in March, as you recall, there was a ceasefire for about 6 weeks from January to March. Then, sadly, Israel broke that ceasefire and kept going south, if you like, in Gaza. So the future is uncertain. There are differences between the Trump plan and Mr. Netanyahu himself. For instance, the Trump plan talks about the option of Palestinian statehood, which, as soon as the press conference was over, Netanyahu went out and said he would never let that happen. Last month, there was a UN conference led by France and the UK about 2 states. And in my opinion, that 2-state outcome, which was endorsed and strengthened by UK, French, Australian, Canadian recognition of the Palestinian state, is the future, but it needs to be reconciled with the elements of the Trump plan that can be reconciled with it.
So far, Hamas have not agreed to play no further part in Gaza's governance. Is this going to be one of the biggest stumbling blocks in your point of view?
Well, Hamas is not the Palestinian people, and there are many Palestinians who seek peace and mutual security with Israel, which has not been forthcoming throughout the occupation, which has now been declared unlawful by the International Court of Justice, the 1967 occupation. I think what's needed is Palestinian agency, Palestinian technocrats, if you like, running both the West Bank and Gaza, the 2 parts of Palestine that Britain recognized as one. And I believe that Hamas can be sidelined, certainly militarily and certainly governmentally, by people of goodwill who believe that the future lies in peaceful coexistence between Palestine and Israel, with that key element of mutual security and respect for the rule of law.
So, Vincent, many are looking at what the next move is going to be. Some have said that actually the ball now is in Netanyahu's court. What do you expect from the Israeli Prime Minister? He's in a tough position. He's got a lot of opposition within Israel. We've seen and covered the protests that seem to be certainly every week, but almost on a daily basis, asking for the return of the hostages. That's now on the table. What can Netanyahu do next?
I think it's quite hard for him to wriggle out of this, to be honest with you. President Trump is the one person, the one country that can influence Israel. Merz from Germany and Starmer from the UK and Macron from France have tried, and they are doing their best, I believe. But it's Trump who can call the shots. Now, he did stop the second Israeli attack on Iran. He ordered Netanyahu, effectively, to stop the jets from flying, and they turned back. I think he has that power to make a difference. And as you said, the hostage families, about 50 of them, and those who were families of those who were released earlier, back in February, March, are pressing very hard for this to be a real outcome, to be the end of this genocide. I hope that's what comes about. And I think that the Israeli military also want this to stop. They're exhausted, and they know that they cannot eliminate the idea of Hamas by eliminating people.
Yeah.
So there is pressure from both from within the Israeli government and from without. And the opposition parties, the oppositions to Netanyahu, are all saying, we will back you in parliament if you go down this road.
Sir Vincent, thank you so much for giving us your time. Good to speak to you. Sir Vincent Fean is the former British Consul General in Jerusalem and de facto ambassador to the occupied Palestinian territories from 2010 to 2014.
Since the beginning of the year, like you said, we've seen numerous attempts and truces. The fact that we had a January ceasefire agreement, one that was very detailed, actually looked in stages that relied on Trump pressuring Netanyahu to actually agree to that deal. But then ultimately, when the Israelis decided that they felt that they would rather actually go back to war than to actually see the ceasefire agreement go through, and that the Trump administration fell in line, was a major point of concern. And in the end, also, we know that in the ceasefire talks themselves, despite progress on the table, whenever Netanyahu wanted to change things, Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, would again get in line with what Netanyahu ended up deciding. And so there was either very inept mediation or quite bad faith mediation, and that the ceasefire talks ended up becoming part of the war strategy rather than the means to end it. And so I think Trump has his work cut out, in the sense that he needs to prove to everybody in the region, not just to Hamas, to the Israelis, but also to the Arab states, that he is ready to apply that necessary pressure. If he is seriously invested in the plan that he announced on Monday and asserts it more as his own plan, even though it's, of course, one that's constructed by multiple actors, if he wants to show that investment, then he needs to be serious about backing it up. I think that if this initiative fails, for all its faults, at least in focusing on the ceasefire terms, and then leaving the day after questions for later, as long as he's open for that and is willing to pull the muscle behind it, then I think we can actually see the U.S. play that constructive role to at least provide a better path than we've had up until now, which has only been more and more cover for Israel's assault on Gaza and even the potential expulsion of Gazans. I think Hamas has actually made rather a smart move by saying yes and or yes but. In that kind of approach, they've basically helped to kind of throw the ball back into the court of Netanyahu, but also the Arab states, in the sense that Hamas is actually saying we actually agree to specifically the ceasefire component, where they talk about the release of the hostages, and then using that essentially and disaggregating that from the other sort of quote unquote day after questions, which were the much more serious and severe aspects of this plan. So by actually delinking the ceasefire from the day after, Hamas has both been able to reserve certain strategic issues that were important, not just for Hamas, but for Palestinians, but also to signal to Trump and to the Arab states that we are open to negotiating based on this framework, and that we will go point by point on the provisions, but that we are ready to engage in good faith on these questions. And this I think helps to avert a concern that by dismissing it outright, that would basically allow Israel to have the green light to go with an even more aggressive assault than is already happening right now. What's different about the Trump-Netanyahu version is that it excludes the PA entirely. And in many ways, it envisions it as part of this sort of Blair Institute affiliated organization with multiple representatives, with very few Palestinians on that, or let alone Palestinians who are decided on the political terms of the main parties. So the structure of this and the idea of this is actually not new. And I think here is actually where Hamas is trying to say that we are open to negotiating on this front, and is again putting the ball back onto the Arab League's court to saying, if you welcome this plan and want to engage with this, let's try to tilt it back to at least what the framework even in the Arab League reconstruction plan provided. So I think there's actually a good space of middle ground. But the main divergence here is how far they can actually succeed in pushing back against what is essentially an Israeli-led campaign to exclude any real Palestinian agency or governance or self-determination over Gaza. And so I think the Arab states are actually very pivotal in this question of the mediation. Like up until now, you've basically had the Netanyahu government very much steer Washington, D.C. into its direction in the ceasefire talks, in questions about Gaza's day after. And the hope was that the Arab states, particularly the Gulf, would try to be a bit more of a counterweight to that. And in some ways, there have been a lot of dynamics that have shifted towards that. Arab states themselves have tried to assert themselves more clearly towards Trump, primarily for their own interests, and that what was initially regional considerations, primarily vis-a-vis Iran, is actually now more and more shifted towards the question of Israel-Palestine, and that the Gaza war was always very dominant, but the fact that the Israel-Iran war really shook up the Gulf states, and the fact that just a few weeks ago, Israel even struck Hamas's offices in Doha, in Qatar, which is a major U.S. ally, has, I think, really shaken the Gulf states to realize or to feel that Israel is potentially just as much as a strategic risk as Iran on the other side. And so I think that has helped actually build some more movement and activity, or at least some nominal unity among Gulf and Arab states to build on this. And this is where we see this kind of increased pressure on Hamas to try to cede to these terms of under Trump. But I think also that they'll play a really crucial role in trying to keep tilting Trump away from Netanyahu, and to say and to tell the president that the Israelis are really guiding the U.S. down a path which is not constructive for the region, that is really against the wishes of the Arab positions,